primarily what I got to tell you right now is that people aren't sleeping. Insomnia is a huge problem. It's been that way for quite some time, but it is over the edge right now. People just aren't sleeping very well. And this is one thing I learned, which I thought was worth sharing. This should be headline news. There are three things that suppress the immune system: stress, poor nutrition, and lack of sleep. And this sounds like everybody I know. And so with the fact that we're not done with this pandemic, and there's always, other things to be concerned about too in terms of health, we want to address those three aspects: reduce our levels of stress, eat better, and get a good night's sleep. If you really feel as if you're suffering, it's best to get some help, seek help. There's no shame in asking for help. I'm a big fan of the work of Brene Brown, and she says we need to be more vulnerable to show our strength. And so by seeking help, we indeed are showing strength. And this could be, going to a counselor, going to a therapist. I'm a big fan of support groups. Going to meet other people who are in similar situations. There's a support group for every stressor out there. The granddaddy is AA, and then of course Al-Anon, but there are support groups for nurses who treat COVID patients. There's support groups for people with Lyme disease. There's support groups for adults whose kids have autism. I mean, you name the stressor, there's a support group. And the biggest thing, and I want to make sure I mention this, that we're seeing right now with all of this, are this idea of loneliness, alienation, and isolation. That adds to the whole equation of change. And so having a support group where you realize that you're not alone is very important. The next one I want to talk about is self-care. And, a lot of people think self-care is taking a jacuzzi bath with candles and nice music. And yeah, that's part of it, but that's not all of it. Taking time to unplug from the internet is self-care. Eating good is self-care. And so that's kind of like a general category, but part of self-care is this next one, and that's meditation. I'm a real big fan of the importance of meditation. And the reason for that is this: we are barraged with sensory bombardment, mostly today from social media and the news. But our minds weren't meant to take in information nonstop. We have to have periods of rest. So to add to what I just mentioned, let's do two more. We need to really cut back on doom scrolling. When I heard that term on the news, I'm thinking like, oh, I got to remember this one. This is great, because people are constantly looking through their social media feeds for the next disaster. And that is no way to live a life. And, we can live without that stuff. And we can certainly live without that for 5 minutes and just unplug for a while. So we need to have what I call healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries means that, I'm not saying that don't go on social media, but don't spend 5 hours at a time on it. And then the last thing I want to mention is the importance of nature. One thing we found out about the pandemic was that when people were told stay in your house, they didn't want to do that. A lot of them actually would sneak outside and go for walks in the woods, or I live in Colorado, so they would go up in the mountains. They would go to parks and things. Nature is a true healing agent, and it puts things back in perspective. First one I want to mention is the practice of meditation. And I suggest to people, start with 5 minutes a day. And if you can't do 5 minutes, try 2 minutes, something really short. But find a quiet place to sit still without any distractions, and that includes smartphones, just to focus on your breathing. Just focus on the flow of breath for a little while. The next one is humor. I'm a real big fan of the healing power of humor. Turns out that there's all kinds of types of humor. My favorite for this is self-deprecating humor, where we can make fun of ourselves. And, my wife often says to me, she goes, boy, you're your own best audience. And, I'm always laughing at something. And if I try and tell it to somebody else, they're not going to get the joke. But I see the irony in life, and I see the incongruity in it. It definitely gives me a chuckle. How many times, let me just ask the audience, how many times have you had a bad moment and you think to yourself, a year from now, this will be funny. Right now, it is not funny. Well, what you've done is you separate it out long enough to see the bigger picture and realize it is pretty funny. And I would say, don't wait a whole year for the laugh. Get it now. I'm also a big fan of exercise. We all know the benefits of exercise. It definitely helps reduce stress, and it definitely helps reduce anxiety. there's a concept called circadian rhythms. And this is not some kind of new age thing on the National Enquirer. It's a documented scientific fact that our bodies are on a 24-hour clock. If we don't go to bed the same time every night and wake up the same time every morning, then we throw out our body rhythms, and it shows up with health problems. And so they suggest the experts say, eat at the same time, dinner, lunch, and breakfast every day. Go to sleep at the same time and wake up at the same time. So that's one thing to consider. One more thing I got to tell you, and I learned this from a couple of different experts in the field of digital toxicity. Turn off your Wi-Fi router before you go to bed. Put your Wi-Fi router on a power strip, and when you do your nighttime routines of turn out the lights, close the door, put the dog out to pee, that kind of thing, turn off the Wi-Fi router. And the reason for that is this. The Wi-Fi router emits a vibration that affects the pineal gland's ability to make melatonin. Melatonin is your sleep hormone, and if you're not making enough of it, you're not going to get a good night's sleep. And so the Wi-Fi router is thought to be one of the things that affects that. Also, the whole sleep industry is saying this: leave your technology out of the bedroom. Go back to an analog alarm clock. Don't put your cell phone under your pillow. That's really bad news. There's little things we can do along the way. And again, this comes down to healthy boundaries. Using your power of imagination is so beneficial in the healing process. And we know this through the skills of visualization and guided mental imagery, that people can do an incredible healing process, if nothing more, just intercepting a stress response so that you don't have your body wired for stress all day long. When we talk about ways in which we can stay grounded and stay centered, we want to acknowledge the health of the human spirit. And the big push I recommend to people is we are trying to move from a motivation of fear, and we could say, and anger, toward love and compassion. That's the direction we want to go. And maybe every day ask yourself, am I headed in the right direction toward love and compassion? And we're not talking Hollywood romance here. We're just talking the golden rule to extend love and compassion to others as we would like to receive that ourselves. So if you can keep that in mind, you're doing great. There's a really wonderful idea about the power of stillness, taking time to be still. And, there's millions of quotes from all kinds of scriptures and sacred texts about the importance of stillness. But really, our culture does not encourage us to go inside and do soul searching. Our culture says, plug into the internet, to television, to streaming, and keep staying there. And, we have things like now, like binge watching and doom scrolling and things like that. Rarely do we ever get encouraged to go inside. And so I would like to say that it's very important to do that. I've done that on a regular basis. And I think that we all need to take time to go inside, do some soul searching, and do some collective insights about who we are and why we're here. And those are two very, very powerful questions. Come out with a new, it's not really a CD, but I'm going to call it a CD because it's the technology we still use, the name we still use for it. It's called Above the Fray. I think we have 8 or 9 different tracks for guided mental imagery. And it's just a chance to take yourself into a different place and catch your breath. That's the bottom line, is to catch your breath and get some mental clarity.
Above the Fray is a collection of guided meditations and visualizations for surrender, serenity, and a soothing sense of inner peace. You can purchase this relaxing meditation collection from most online audiobook retailers. Learn more at wetwaremedia.com.